retro fans. In this episode I'm going to show you how to use a Roland MC 303 Groovebox in order to sync a C64 running Mssiah, running Bassline for example, and how we can combine those two, let's say, instruments to create some more fancy techno sound, something like this. And as a first thing, I want to show you what I'm talking about, and this is basically the Roland MC 303, which is kind of a rebuilt mix of some of the famous 80s Roland devices like the 303 and the 808, and combining the bassline machine with a drum machine. And it comes with a lot of presets, a lot of different instruments, starting from the 303, ranging over the 808 up to the 909, having different drum sets on it, drum sounds, and it has a lot of, let's call it synthesizer sounds as well, and you can influence most of the parameters by different controls like cutoff resonance, LFO, and so on. And basically it doesn't sound so bad. It sounds, well, quite okayish for a quite cheap machine like this. But for me, some of the especially 303 like sounds are a bit thin, not very aggressive, not very fat, and therefore I started to play around with combining the C64 with the MC 303. And basically this video is covering two topics. One topic is how to sync those two machines. So we're going to run a drum pattern on the 303, and we're going to synchronize a demo pattern from Mssiah Bassline on the C64. And as a very first example, I'm just going to play the drum pattern. And if we just set over the bassline, then we can hear that those two instruments are not synced at all. And the first thing is going to be how to get those two devices into sync. And in order to do so, we have to perform a couple of things on the C64 as well as on the MC303. And I'm just going to switch over to my C64 view because we're going to need this pretty soon. And here we go. And as a very first thing, we have to assure that the MC303 is outputting sync data, MIDI sync data. And in order to do so, we have to press Shift and 16, which is the system key. And here we have to go to parameter set system 2, and this needs to be set to on. So if it's going to be off, then it's not going to output any sync data. So we set this to on, and then we can exit this, and then we are back to our pattern we've just created. And as a next thing, we're going to have to change a couple of things on the C64. And the first thing is we go to settings, and here we have the sync option, and we have to set this to MIDI clock or MIDI pattern select. It's actually not really important, but for the purpose of this exercise we can go for MIDI clock. If we set this to MIDI and pattern select, we have, in addition to the MIDI clock, the chance to use, for example, the MC303 to change patterns on the C64 as well, which is going to be a little bit complicated to enter into the MC303. So therefore I just left this out for this exercise. So therefore we are with MIDI clock absolutely fine. So, and if we have done so, then we go back to our Mssiah view, and here we have this two little icons at the top right hand corner just above the bass, and one is going to be the MIDI, is going to be a blank screen function, which we are not going to use, and this is going to be the sync option, and by pressing the left shift key and turning the knob assigned to this white rectangle in this time, and sometimes it's a circle as well, we activate this option. And if we're going to press run stop, we can hear that nothing is going to happen anymore because the sequencer is waiting for an external sync signal. And now we have the chance to assign our white control to a different function. And if we're going to hit play on the MC303, hopefully both devices will start to play something. So not very exciting at all, I know, but it's just to demonstrate how those two things work together. So much about the sync mode, and basically we're going to leave the sync mode right now, because for the next example we're going to switch this whole thing into MIDI mode, and therefore we have to perform a couple of different steps. And one of the first thing is we have to go to the MIDI menu, and here we have to decide on which MIDI channel the C64 is listening to external MIDI information, notes, control events, something like this. And this is really important because if we use a different MIDI channel on the MC303, then nothing will happen at all. Or you may wonder what kind of strange notes the C64 is playing. And we have to keep in mind that on the 303, the MIDI channel is simply linked to the instrument we're going to use. So that's basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, and if we're going to use instrument number 4 as an external instrument, then we have to set the MIDI channel to 4 here as well. And that's basically all we have to do in this menu. Then we can jump out of it already. And then we have to perform one additional operation on the C64. And we have to set this to MIDI mode, as we can see in the top most right hand corner above the end of the line. We can see seq and MIDI, which means sequencer. It's the internal sequencer. And MIDI means we set the whole instrument to MIDI mode. And by simply pressing the right shift key and the up arrow key, we set this whole thing to MIDI mode, and the screen blanks. That's normal for all of the Mssiah instruments. As soon as they run in MIDI mode, we won't see anything at all, because this is to optimize the synchronization and to minimize system noise by just disabling the screen refresh, for example. So, and as a next thing, we're going to use a demo pattern on the MC303. And I have used, I think it was this one. And probably not, because it's silent. This is indeed strange, because this has worked quite a minute ago. Here we go. That's going to be a capture issue because the sound is linked to my C64 input and therefore we won't hear anything at all. So, and that's the one we're going to use. And I'm going to assign the instrument number 4 to be the external instrument. So we go to select instrument number 4 and then we're going to press the shift 14, which is out assign. And here we can see this is set to internal. And if we're going to set this to external, then this instrument pattern is played via MIDI to an external instrument. And let's see how this is going to work. So if I mute the MC3, we can hear that just the C64 is playing. So I guess you know how this is going to work. And this can be done with every instrument usable on the MC3. You just have to set the responding MIDI channel on the C64. And if you're going to listen to a different demo pattern, for example, let's go to number 5. This sounds like a very good channel we can use. So as you can see, there are plenty of options and opportunities to use predefined pattern, own pattern, and replacing some of the instruments by external devices. And if we're going to use a MIDI hub, for example, then we can even attach more than one C64 to the MC303. And therefore we have the chance to use Bassline, for example, as well as the monosynth. Or if we want to have some, let's say, chiptune like 8-bit dish drum sounds, we even can use the drum machine of the C64 as well and replace some of the drum sounds with the Mssiah sounds. And therefore you have a lot of options. I mean, you can use this as your base for creating your music, creating your sounds. If you want to have a, let's say, doorless setup, if you don't want to use a laptop or something like this, Then you have a fully equipped pattern sequencer here, where we can combine a couple of patterns to songs and doing all that stuff. You can assign MIDI controls to control effects on the C64 as well. Let's say to automate things, to maybe link the LFO to the cutoff or something like this, so you don't have to turn the knobs by yourself all the time. And there are a lot of options. Unfortunately, at least for me, the handling or the operation of the Groovebox is kind of, well, let's say outdated or a little bit strange. So every time I'm going to test something on Groovebox, I really have to refer to the manual, and it's sometimes really a little bit weird because you have to flick through about 120 pages or something like this just to find one single line where they explain how to do something in order to achieve a certain outcome. And therefore I'm using the Groovebox almost none at all. I went completely to use a software like Ableton, for example, because there it is much more intuitive to work, especially with external synthesizers. But anyway, I just want to show you how to approach this whole story, and I think the main approach is going to be the very same for different hardware sequencers like this. You really have to keep in mind to set those devices to the responding MIDI channel so that they can communicate with each other. Or if you just want to trigger external sequences, then you have to set those devices into sync mode, and then everything is going to be linked together, and that's basically not very complicated at all. And well, that's basically all I want to say in this episode, and I hope it was kind of interesting to you as well, and therefore I'm not going to make this any longer. As usual, thank you very much for watching, and feel free to use the comment section to ask questions, to add comments about this whole approach and some ideas, something like this. And feel free to subscribe to my channel if you want to stay informed about the next videos, or follow me on Twitter. I will highly appreciate this. And as usual, see you for the next episode. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.